date.
I have no dates whatsoever.
Here we go. Good afternoon. I'm Barbara Tinnerman Cecil, and on behalf of Susie Spittler and Tom Beck, who records these sessions for us, I want to welcome you to the 19th oral history taping. This spring series, we will talk about school personnel, and today is Tuesday, April the 9th, 2013, and we're going to hear about the Melton Union School bus drivers. Our first speaker is Kenny Kaufman, and I'll just turn it over to him. Kenny.
Okay, I'm Kenny Kaufman, school bus driver, 1958 to 88, at 30 years. I went to Lee Hissong, he was the bus supervisor, see if I could get a job driving the bus. Lee said, yeah, we need drivers, and the school board hired me in September of 58. I drove 9 years. Then Lee Hissong had to quit his job as bus supervisor. Osborne superintendent called me in to his office and asked me if I would take the job of being bus supervisor. I said, I will think about it. I came home and told my wife, Lucille. Superintendent Osborne asked me to be bus supervisor. Lucille said it was up to me. I went to Osborne, the superintendent, told him I would take the job as bus supervisor. The school board hired me. I had 22 school buses to look after with the help of my wife, Lucille. Drove 27 years, 2 routes in the morning, had a kindergarten route at noon, 2 routes in the evening and afternoon. I had 2 routes, morning and afternoon. I drove school bus 30 years at Melton Union School. I was proud of all drivers. I trained 46 ladies and 9 men to drive school bus. Every year, state patrolmen came out to our farm to inspect the buses. If passed, they put a sticker on the side of the bus. Lucille always had cake, pie, or ice cream for the patrolman after inspection was done. In the winter months, had to go and check the roads to see if the road's safe for school buses to run. If the road's bad, close school. This one morning it was icy on the roads, very slick. Dick Starner called me to see how the road was. Lucille said, well, Kenny's in the ditch down at the end of the lane. Well, I guess we better call school off, he said. So we closed for the day. I had to get a record to get my bus out of the ditch. So then here I got this was when I had a country route. This was when I started to drive the bus, and the country boy had to vomit he vomited in the aisle on the bus. I was close to my house. I drove back our lane and told the boy I would get the water hose out here, and he could flush it out the door. I had children on the bus. Well, then, this is another thing. This was my town route. in West Mountain. This girl, Angie, was mad at a boy on the bus. The boy was sitting on the right front seat. Angie had a tomato in her hand and was going to hit this boy in the back of the head. She missed his head and hit my windshield and had tomatoes all over the windshield of the bus. So that's my story on the bus.
I'm Lucille Kaufman. I drove the bus for 27 years. And Mr. Kaufman wanted me to get my license. So I got my license, and now he's the boss at home and boss of me at school. I had a morning route, afternoon route, and kindergarten route. Driving the bus every day was different every day. Some days it was the children. Sometimes I would have to help Kenny to get the bus out to the Joneses. One day I was pulling him up to Joneses, so we came to the railroad track. I stopped, Kenny didn't. He hit the back end, so I had to go up and get Joneses and have them to come down and pull him up. He said, "Why did you stop?" I said, "We're always supposed to stop at railroad tracks." A couple of things that happened on the bus. This was a high school route. This one boy was just mischievous. One afternoon, I left him off at his driveway, and he mooned me. When I got back to school to pick him up at the elementary, I saw Sam Eisen and told him what happened. We both laughed. I told him I would take care of him. I didn't say anything to him the next day, so he asked me if I saw what he did, and I said, no. So he told me he mooned me. I said, well, who could see that little butt? Well, the next afternoon, I really got mooned. The next morning, I had a little talk with him and told him never to do it again. And then there was a time I went through Hoke Platte. There was some boys playing with a basketball. It was like like when I got up to where they were playing, I think they rolled that ball as I went past, and I ran over it. And you never heard such a big, loud bang. One person I will never forget, it was Sherry Hayworth. She was as a handicap, and they would bring her out and put her on the bus. When we got to school, I would get her and put her in a wheelchair. There was a smile on her face, and I think she could be a little mischievous. She was a very special person.
My name is Bernadine Breidenbaugh. I've been driving for 33 years. Lucille and I were the two women that had started, and I had 3 routes: high school, kindergarten, and grade school, until they deleted that, and then I only had 2 routes. I enjoyed every bit of it. I missed the children. They were my one thing. Pay didn't mean anything. You could tell who was conquered at home and loved, the respect, and all the way around. The only thing I can remember through the orneriness of 2 boys in the back, and they were going, one of them had said something to the other one, and I just pulled over, put my 4-ways on, and walked back, and I was dodging their bang to each other. And I figured, well, I better get this stopped. I did not touch them. I did not curse to them. I made up my mind that was for the school authorities to do. And don't you know, to this day, the one, I think the other one had moved away, but the one is still around here. He comes in and we get to laughing how things went. And that's the way some of these children are. They respect you. If you don't go overboard and you treat them like they wanted to be treated, and also, to a certain extent, you can tell the ones that have been disciplined at home and talked to. Then I had a girl, she decided she was going to sit on, this was on high school, and that she was going to sit on this boy's lap. And before I left the high school, I said, I won't say her name, and I said, well, you just got something going in this bus. Well, she said, what do you mean? I said, well, tomorrow, boys on one side, girls on the other. I do not want to see anybody changing seats. So that went over, and clear to my end of my driving, that's how it went. So that's my thing of driving the bus, and I would love to go back, but the body is not with it. Pat Miller.
My name is Pat Miller. I started driving a bus in 1973. I drove for 34 years. I drove elementary, high school, kindergarten, the Dayton Regional route, and also the JBS route, sometime in there. The things that I can remember, I drove Laura and Potsdam elementary and high school route. And you know, Laura and Potsdam were rivals. So once I was on Ditmer Road, and I had my bus was completely full, packed. And I had this fight in the back of my bus. 2 high school boys, and they was just going at it with legs and arms and everything flying. And I had little kids on the bus too. So I stopped the bus and I went back, I opened my emergency door, and I made these 2 boys get off the bus. And I said, you guys can walk if that's what you're gonna do. And then I came on into the school and I sat down in my seat and I thought, oh man, I probably shouldn't have done that. So I went upstairs, told Mr. Steiner what I had done. He said, oh, Pat, you know that's against the law. I said, yes, I know it's against the law, but you know what? I don't care. He said, we'll have to have a meeting with parents and supervisors and all this. I knew Kenny'd be on my side because he always was on our side. You know, he stood behind us no matter what we did, whether it was right or wrong. And anyway, the parents came in, we had the meeting, and the parents said, you know, that's a good thing. You should have made them walk. So I got by with that. And let's see, what else did I do? And I was driving the bus, and this little elementary kid in Laura, if I mention his name, I know a lot of you people would know him. But it was a cold, below zero day, and the bus was full, and I heard this crying and people, you know, moving around. And so I said, oh my, what's the matter? So I looked back, and this kid had stuck his tongue to the side of the bus, and it had stuck. You know how that would be. And he was crying. His nose was running, and he was just sobbing. So I thought, oh, what can I do? I didn't know what to do. Went back up to my seat, and I got my coffee. I had a little bit of coffee left in the cup. Took it back and poured it on his tongue, and it came loose, of course. He told me later, he said, you know, I haven't liked coffee since. Then once I took a trip. We had lots of trips, lots of fun on our trips. And I took Sally and Margie Coate to Urbana College for a volleyball game. No, it was basketball. It was really cold. And on the way back, I had an old bus. And on the way back, I could hardly see. And the lights started dimming on my bus, and it was like 11:30 at night. And so I came to 235 there on 36 and 235. And there was a little pizza place there, and the girls was hungry. They didn't have anything to eat, and I knew that. So when I pulled in this lot of this pizza place, the bus just quit. It just died. And it was really cold outside, so I had no lights or anything. So this man came out, and he said, we just closed. And Sally said, we asked him if he could we was just on our way home and our bus quit. He said, I'll open the store and you guys come on in. We went in and they fixed us pizza. And I called Kenny, and we had, at that time, we had no radios on our bus, no cell phones. We didn't have anything, and no cameras like they do now. I mean, we was just stranded out there. So I called Kenny at home. He was in bed, of course, and so he gets in his bus really cold night and come up and picks me up, and those girls. And so we came home, and it was very, very late.
Was that Sally Dickinson?
Sally Dickerson. Sally and Marjorie Coach.
Okay.
And Margie was kind of sick that night. I remember that she's got allergies or something, so she wasn't feeling good, and I felt bad for her. But anyway, that was really nice of those people. And it was like a little mom and pop thing. So when we left, of course, the girls had no money, so Sally and I gave them some money. So that's one of my trip things. Another trip thing I did, I went to Versailles, and we won the game, a football game. But the guys up there started throwing tomatoes at our buses. We had tomatoes everywhere. And so the fire department come and rinsed our buses off, and then we left and came on home. See, that's some of my things. I've got one other big thing to tell, but I'll just wait till Kenny starts that. But Kenny was a wonderful boss. He was a real good guy, and still is. I'll give it to Sally now.
Okay. I started driving in 1970, and I subbed for 2 years, and I said, if I don't get something soon, I'm not going to do this anymore, because subbing is really hard. So anyway, I started with a town route for a while, and then Dolores Carnes retired, and I took her route out in Laura. And after a week of that, I said, if I can do this route, I can do any of them. So, and we all had a good time between routes. We'd go in early, some of us, and talk and joke around, and we had a really good time. We were all knew each other's kids and families, and had Christmas parties. And I think one other thing, we did a food stand. It was Opsy, but we did a food stand at the junior high wrestling tournament, and to raise money for scholarships. And I think the first scholarship was maybe $250 for a boy and a girl. And at the end, I think we raised it to $1,000. And it was Barb's kitchen, Barbara J. It's her kitchen. We had to follow her rules. She told us exactly what we had to do and not do. We had homemade chili, barbecue, chicken and noodles, hot dogs, pizza, pies, Rice Krispies. We had various things, but it was all homemade, most of it, and we had a good time. Lots of work, but lots of fun. I'll let somebody else tell the story of Bernadine and the ketchup, or we'll get back with that later. Anyway, one field trip I want to remember or will not forget is Judy Fetters and I went to Indianapolis Dome for a band trip. They were going to participate and then watch other teams too. And it was a late afternoon, early evening contest, and we left very late. I think it was about 11, 12 o'clock. And the band director knew Indianapolis. So they had construction going on, and we could not find our way out of Indianapolis. We drove around town, I know, for an hour. Judy, I think, went through a couple of red lights trying to keep up, and not get lost more. But anyways, turned out we come around to where we started out with, and there's the exit to I-70. So we drove around for nothing. But I think we got home about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So it was a very interesting trip. And then I want to touch on Kenny's retirement in Greenville. We had a party, and everybody came, and I just want to touch on the skit that the drivers did. Bernadine was the bus driver. I don't remember all the others there, but they were participating in a little skit of the kids acting up, throwing paper wads, throwing up, this kind of thing, yelling and screaming. And it was they had a ball. They really did. They had a ball. It was funny. I have it on tape at home. I'm sure some of the others do too. And let's see, weather, I can remember when the bridge was out on 571. I had that area at the time, and we had to go over 55 and around. And at that time, we had kindergarten on the high school route. And I was going up Frederick Hill from Eddings. Halfway up the hill, I had a kindergarten, had to get off the bus. He slid underneath the bus. Couldn't get up his driveway or hill to get to his house. And so one of my high school boys volunteered to go out, and he got him up that hill. So that was a little scary. And the same hill, I can remember coming down. It was a pretty nice day, except in the woods, it was icy. And as I started down, we started sliding. And I'm trying to gear it down, you know, and steer. And the kids thought it was fun. They really enjoyed that. But we made it okay. Let's see. I guess that's about all. I can remember when Kenny took me out to learn how to drive the bus. Had a 6 shift at that time. And he was taking me down on the County Line Road, and I was supposed to turn on Moat Road, and I was going a little bit too fast. And I was going around that corner, and Kenny was almost out of his seat. Afraid I was going to turn that bus over, I think. But anyway, we had some good experiences, and Kenny's always been a good foreman and always backed us, no matter what. I'll reiterate what Pat said. So, Evelyn, it's your turn.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Bowman. I haven't driven near as long as this group up here, but I did start in '67 and drove for 14 years, and I really enjoyed my driving. The one story I was remembering, I liked Ed Lendensky was always there when we needed him. I had a girl that would not sit in her seat. She was always turned around to the back, and I tried to get her to turn around. Well, she wouldn't, so to make a long story short, she ended up going into Ed's office, and he called her parents. They were both at work, and he asked me if I wanted him to put her off the bus, and I said no. I think that's what she wants to do. So I said I want her to ride in the front seat. Well, some of these kids did not want to ride in the front seat, but she did, and I don't know how long. But I'd say at least 2 weeks, and I let her go back, and she was fine. And I had another incident with a young man, I don't know how old, whether it was high school, I believe, in Laura, and he'd come out to the bus as I was pulling up and stopping, and he'd come right up to the bus when the doors opened out. So I had to, get him to stay back. So I told him and talked to him, and I guess there was nothing happened, but we got that taken care of. But several years later, I was at a ball game with my son, and this was quite a few years. I think he was out of school, and he come up to me, and he asked me, he said, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, no, I did not know him, but he knew me. And he told me who he was, and he was that young man. Well, that always made me feel good, because, I didn't want him to get mad or keep any animosity. But anyway, I think the worst experience, not bad, I was driving 571 East, and I was stopped, and there was a car. I didn't open my doors, and there was a car coming towards me, and it was driving very slow, and the man that was driving it just went out on the right side of the road, off of the road, and went right on around past the bus. So I guess I got his license number, or the cars that were stopped got it. But anyway, he had to go to court. And my husband and I went to court, and the judge was talking to him, and the man couldn't hear. And the judge said, I don't know whether you could hear a train whistle. So he took his license away from him right there. And the man had to call family, somebody else, to come in and pick him up. I felt really bad about it, but about 2 days later, I got a call from his family, and they thanked me because they had been trying to get him off the road for quite a while. So they were glad that he, did lose his license. So, but that was at the time. It was kind of depressing, but I'm glad I did it now. But I'm like everybody said, Kenny was always there. Dick Steiner was always there. Ed Lendensky, Charlie Tomlin, are all there. And I think we all had a good group of drivers. We got together, and we still get together, which I think is wonderful. I wouldn't want to drive nowadays, not the way things are. But I enjoyed it. I really did. So I'll give Hilda. So you're all on, Hilda.
I haven't got much to say. I'm Hilda Spitzler. Don't ask me how, when I started, but I think I stopped in '89. I'm not sure. I drove 22 years. And all I can tell you is what, pardon?
My little books I got at home, and I got the dates on there.
I didn't hear him.
He's got his book at home. He could look it up for you.
Oh. And I can just tell you some of the things that happened to my bus. The back seat got slit, and there was a girl on high school, and she was going to get off of her bus, and she was sitting in the middle, and it took time for her to get down there. And this car come up behind me, and I could hear him revving his motor. And I thought, oh dear, what's he going to do? Well, he just kept revving his motor up, and pretty soon the girl got off of the bus, and she was in the front of the bus, ready to cross, and he gunned it. He come flying up by, and it scared me so bad. And I thought, well, I do, and I blowed the horn, and she jumped straight up in the air, and that's the only thing that saved her. And I did that to a little boy on 48 that he tried to go across and almost got hit. And let's see what else. Oh, I had a BB shot at my bus one time, and well, I don't know what else to tell you, because I can't really see anymore. So Nellie, take it over.
Hi, I'm Nellie Besecker. I drove 25 years plus 4 years subbing, and I really enjoyed it to no end. And Kenny brought me my first bus over there to the house. I said, well, Kenny, how do we work the lift? He says, I don't know. It looked like an old milk truck. It wasn't a new bus or anything like that. And I went and picked up my one child, and I got there and I got the lift down. I told his dad, I said, I don't know how to do this. He said, well, he does. Said he'll back in there and fasten himself in. And he did. And from then on, it got easy. And then the route got longer. It was only supposed to be 45 minutes a day. And when I retired, it was almost 8 hours a day. But I was going every place, not just one school, but a lot of schools. And then I drove that Dayton route once. Kenny called and he said, I'm going to have to put you on this Dayton run. Well, I didn't know where this school was or where Children's was or anything. I get on this bus. I finally found it. But this one boy kept getting up and standing up and hollering, and I didn't know what was going on. So finally, I come back and I called Mary Winstead. I said, Mary, what was wrong? She said, you stayed too long at Children's. You have to be on a move certain time. I said, okay. So the next day, Kenny called and he said, you'll have to run that route again. And I said, He said, yes, you will. And I said, only if I can take somebody with me. I said, so we called Joanna Overla, and she came and rode with me. We had a flashlight going down Inglewood hunting for this house that night, because you start out so early you can't see the house numbers. Finally, I saw a man standing down there, and he's going, I said, okay, that must be where we go. So we went down there, and sure enough, there he was. And he told us, he said, if you turn wrong, she'll go, ah. And we turned wrong once, but we got back on it.
Did you drive a handicap?
Yes, it was handicap.
Okay.
That's all they let me have.
Okay.
They gave me that big bus one time to drive it, and I run over the sidewalk with it. It was too long. I turned over to Norma.
Okay.
I had fun.
Good way though. Okay, I started driving in 1970. Okay, I'll get it closer. I had always been a secretary bookkeeper, and Kenny came to me one day and he said, Norma, you drive to Dayton all the time. He said, how about, would you drive to JVS? It was 1970 when they started JVS down on Route 49, way down there. And I said, well, I'll try it. If I don't like it, I'll go back to the office. I considered that. And the reason they did that was the students that were up here that had academics stayed at West Mountain. The ones that needed other things like diesel and some of the other different things, they sent them down to JVS. And so I drove that year without a contract. I don't know that Kenny ever do that or not, but I drove 1 year without a contract. Said I would try it. I did, and I'd go back to the office if I didn't like it. Renva Bennington and I both drove together. What happens is the children would come in on their buses, and those that were going to JVS would get on our buses. We would go down. Then in the afternoon, whatever children came out, the ones that lived east of West Milton or was coming back to West Milton would get on Renva's bus. And those that were west of West Milton would get on my bus, and then I would take them home. That's the reason you would see me going different ways. People would say, well, normally you're always going different. It was because it depended on what child was on the bus. That's the way I went. Dick Steiner said to me, Norma, you got brains. You get those children home the best way you can with the least amount of gasoline and end up at home. And so I would check and see what children were on there, and that's the way I would go. Let's see. Oh, when I first started to drive, you know, as you say, it's really hard to be a sub. It's the same way when you first start. They'll try you everything. All of you bus drivers know. And I kept feeling this stuff in the back of my head, and I thought, when I got home, I thought, what in the world is that? And I was about ready to cry. And my husband says, Norma, you don't have to do that. I said, oh, no, they're not going to get around me. And so the next morning, I came in on the bus, and I said, how did all you guys know that I needed rubber bands? It was really nice of you to give me a bunch of rubber bands. And you know, from then on, well, not really from then on, then they were still getting ready, trying me, because what they would do is somebody threw a firecracker in the door well. And boy, I came out of my seat. I always thought if you were nice to the children, they would be nice to you, but it does not work that way. And when that firecracker went in there, I said, hey, whoever did that, your parents is going to have to take care of that if there's any damage. As luck would have it, there wasn't any damage. But from then on, they knew I was mad enough that I'd have whipped them. I wished I could have. Okay, now then the next thing that happened to me was one time, it was raining quite a lot, and there were not enough children. See, in the meantime, some of them had started driving to JVS, and there weren't enough children to go down in the morning to take 2 buses. So Kenny put them all on my bus, and we started on down. Well, when we got down to almost to Route 70, I could see all of these kids that were really hurrying to get into JVS, and they came up the ramp, and there was about 5 of them, and I said I had time enough to tell my children, I said, kids, if that 5th one comes up, I most probably, with the weight that's on my bus, raining, I won't be able to stop. And I knew it was going to most probably hit him some way. And he had a little Volkswagen, and I went just up over his trunk, and that little kid came out of the car, and he was just crying his eyes out. He said, this is my brother's car, and I wasn't supposed to drive it today. And I thought, yes, and you shouldn't have tried to beat the bus, too. That's exactly what happened. Well, the State Patrol, all the kids in the bus, they were on my side because they knew that it really wasn't my fault. But anytime you are hit behind the post, it is still your fault, and I guess the school took care of it, but they never cited me for anything. But that's the way kids are. They get so excited they want to get there, you know, and they think they can make it, and so that's what that child did. Okay, then my next episode was I was at home. Of course, I had a morning route, then I had kindergarten routes, and sometime in the middle there, a secretary from school called me and said, Norma, you're supposed to go up to Kenny's house, get a bus, and go up to Horseshoe Bend and get the kids, and because Bob Smith has broken down up there, and you go on up and get the kids and bring them on in. So I thought, I've always been taught to do what they told me to do, so I did it. I went up to Horseshoe Bend, and I had to back 3 times before I finally made it up So I went home and I thought to myself, how on earth does that bus driver do that every day? How does she get around that, you know? And so I went on up, and by the time I got up there, I pulled up to this stop sign, and here come another car upside of me, and believe it or not, it was the mechanic from Ward Jones, and he pulled upside of me, and I opened my window, and he said, "Hey, lady," he said, "you did a marvelous job getting up that hill." And I said, "Yeah, but I don't see any bus." So evidently Bob Smith got the bus going, and he took the kids on into town. So I went home, ate my lunch, and before I was ready to go back down to JVS for the afternoon, the phone rang, and it was Dick Steiner. He said, "Hey, Norma," he said, "did you go up Horseshoe Bend?" I said, "Well, sure. Why?" I said, "They told me I was supposed to." And he says, "Nobody has ever gone up there." So that was kind of an experience. I suppose I could still do it if they really had to. Oh, okay, what was the other one? Well, one time went to, as all of you know, we had the blizzard of '78. Hilda's gonna laugh when I tell her this. I had gone down with a load of boys to wrestling tournament, and I was sitting up on the bleachers way in the top, and in come Mrs. Farrar. And she came up to me and she says, "Norma, did you know that the weather is getting terrible outside?" Of course, I didn't, because I had been inside all the time. And I said, "Okay." And I thought, well, I can't do anything about it. Pretty soon I'll take the kids home. So when the children got on the bus and we started out, and this was clear down at Germantown, you know how far down there it is. And I came around the corner, and I noted the very first place to stop. I tapped my brake, and I thought, no, Norma, don't hit it very hard. There wasn't anything coming either way. It was dark, you know, and night. And I said to the kids, I said, "I am not going to even hit my brake. I'm just going to roll on through because there's nobody coming." And so that I did that. Well, we got up to Trotwood, the road that went from Trotwood to Brickville. And as you know, on Diamond Mill, it goes way down. And when I got there, here's the cop cars. There were 2 or 3 cars down in there. It was so bad, and they were down in there. I thought, oh my, now what do? I can't go that way. So I turned and went to Trotwood and came all the way up. And you know, by the time I got to Inglewood, there wasn't any ice or snow or anything. So I came on in, and the kids got home. But what I was really going to tell you is one morning, the phone rang, and it was Hilda. She says, "Norma," she said, "there's no school today. I can't get out my door." And of course, I was sleepy, and I remember I went back to bed, and I hit Raleigh, and I said, "You know, I think there's something wrong with Hilda. I don't believe she's quite right." She says she can't get out of her door. But when I woke up and seen how much snow there was in '78 there, then I realized she was right. Oh, let's see. And as they said, we didn't have any radios or no way to communicate. We had to take care of our own things. Yeah. Oh, Judy's not here today. I have to tell you one thing about her. We went to Miamisburg to a football game, and when the football game was over, I said, "Judy," I said, "why don't you start out and go east and hit 741 to come up north, you know." So I just figured she knew what she was doing, and I was following her, and I thought, well, there goes 70, and she went underneath, so that's okay. Well, when she gets to 741, she turns to the right. Instead of going north, she was going south. And I thought, my goodness, she's going to Cincinnati. And so I pulled up and stopped at the stop sign in the left lane so that I was out of the way of other people. And pretty soon here come the music man, who was the band director at that time, and he said, "Norma, what's wrong?" I said, "Well, Judy's on her way to Cincinnati, and I'm going to sit still." He said, "Okay, I'll just go out and get her." So he went down and got her and brought her back, and then she went on. And so when you drive lots of different places, one time I went to Cincinnati, and I went up this hill. I don't remember who. It was Lucille. She said, "Norma, you take the lead." And I thought, well, thank you. There was 3 of us. And so anyhow, we went up this hill. It took me 3 times that time. It was on an angle, and I had to back 3 times to get on up to the University of Cincinnati. And so when we came back down, I was coming back, and I thought, gee whiz, how in the heck am I going to get down onto 75? I went right straight across. And I thought, the only thing I know to do is try to turn around. Here's these other buses following me. I turned around, and as in a empty filling station, the Lord was with me. And I went to this filling station and turned right around, and then when I looked, I saw 75, and I could come north on it. But it's all those different things when you drive out like that. You don't know where you're at and what you're doing. You just have to hope and pray you make it okay. So, and I always appreciated Kenny was a good foreman. He stood behind us, and I think I said I drove for 17 years. Enjoyed the children. I do miss it. I'm like Bernadine. I miss the children. I used to listen to their little songs when they'd come out from kindergarten. They'd be singing love and marriage. Then next is a baby carriage. And I think I'll never forget all those little songs. I should have written them down, and I didn't. That's all I have today.
I want to hear the Bernadine story. What's the Bernadine story that I catch it? The catch it.
Oh, dear.
Was anybody else there besides me?
You have a story that you ought to tell.
Okay, well, this was a year or two, I don't remember exactly, after McDonald's came to town. And of course, we had the food stand. That was our scholarship money. So, of course, some of the people were going to McDonald's and bringing their food down to the cafeteria, eating it in the cafeteria. And this man used our ketchup bottle. And she said he is not using our ketchup bottle. He wants to go to McDonald's and get his own ketchup. So she went out and she got her ketchup bottle. Had a few words, but it turned out okay.
We were there to make money for scholarships, and he had no right to get our ketchup.
Does the school still take trips? Do you know?
Oh, I think they do.
Do they
Oh,
still
yeah.
go on trips and the bus drivers still drive?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about Kenny's retirement party. I know you told us about the skit, but what else did you do?
Gosh, can you remember?
Well, it was that,
In Greenville.
At Greenville.
all of his family was there. And it seems like we had a lot of people. And I remember at his party, I'll tell you a story that happened to me, and then at his party, Kenny requested I tell this story.
Okay.
So I'll start back a little bit. I drove elementary route, high school route in the morning. I had my high school route in the morning, so I came back home. As everybody knows, I live on Milton Potsdam Road at the east end of Potsdam. And so I come home usually, and I would
Hey,
go in and get a cup of
Barb,
coffee.
shh. Come here.
Kenny's got a picture of it.
Hold on to it and you'll get a picture.
After she gets done.
I was driving, I don't know, I think this bus was it was an old bus, but it was in September of 79. And I slowly applied my brakes, and I was gonna turn and go in my driveway. And just as I did, I felt like an airplane had hit me. The whole rear end of that bus fell. I mean, there was parts going everywhere. I had no kids on, and there was no kids on the road, so that was a good thing. And so I thought, oh my, what do I do? Anyway, I was sitting in my bus in the front. Of course, the back end was on the ground, and what had happened, the axle had come loose. The rear axle came loose, and it rolled down Wright Road, and then it was twisting underneath my bus before it got away. But
Your field trip before.
and that was on a Monday morning, and on that Friday night before that, Walt Farrar was the coach. You know, we had this great big guys on our football team, and I had just taken that football team to Carlisle on a trip. So I mean, the good Lord was with me that day. But anyway, I sat there and I was just numb. I didn't know what to do. Of course, I couldn't call anybody. I had no phone. And so the neighbors come out and they called. And people started coming then, and then here comes somebody called Kenny, and he comes out with this bus, and he pulls up, and he comes back, and he just shook his head. He didn't know what to do. Kenny's holding the picture now, as you can see. But anyway, Kenny come over to me, and I was ready to go in. I thought, I am not driving this bus anymore. And my husband is working third shift, so he was home upstairs in bed, and I thought, if he sees this bus, he will not let me drive again. So Kenny walks up to the door, he said, come on. So I started going with him, and I thought, well, where are we going? So I got in his bus, and he started doing his route. And halfway through his route, he stops the bus, and he gets up, and he says, just go finish the route. So he made me get up there and drive. I think if he hadn't, I'd never driven again. But anyway, the safety people came out, and what they said that was in September, and that summer they had put a spring on the back, the rear bus, the back end of the bus, and somehow they didn't tighten up the U-bolts, and it had broken. So I could have killed a bunch of kids. I really could have. So I thank the good Lord for that. And nobody was hurt. I wasn't hurt. I was just scared really bad. And so.
So what about the retirement party now?
At the retirement party, Kenny's retirement party, everybody was there, and I was kind of nervous, and Kenny wanted me to get up and tell that story in front of all these people, so I did that. I don't know how I did. Sally's probably got the tape.
Yeah, I do. We kind of did a life story, kind of a life story deal out of that, but we just had a great time.
This is a picture of it right here.
Did you train everybody, Kenny? Did you train all the bus drivers, or did some of you
Yeah.
already know how
Yeah.
to drive the bus?
Yeah, I trained all of them.
Yeah.
I know he took me out 3 times, and he said, okay, now let's go get your test. I said, Kenny, I've only drove 3 times. He said, let's go.
I had 3 different bus foremen.
Okay.
Lee his song, and then, like I said before, Kenny, and then John Kress. But Lee his song, of course, I had already known from the farm, but I started with the stick shift buses, and I was glad to see an automatic. But we still have some on the farm, so there you go. I mean,
When Bernadine started driving, I can remember, I said, "You are out of your mind. You can't take care of all those kids. You're too nervous for that." And of course, 5 years later, then I started driving too. And she said, "You're out of your mind."
I was real happy when I retired to get Dave Stein, who took over my route. And he had a good bunch of children. In fact, Susie Spittler, I had both of her boys.
From kindergarten all the way through till
All
they
the-
graduated.
yes,
You were the
sir.
bus driver.
Yeah.
Some of us have driven so long, we've hauled kids of other kids, their kids.
You go into a store, and my husband will say, "There's somebody calling you." And I'll turn around, "Bernie," he said, "for heaven's sakes, we can't go anywhere." And here comes some of the children, and it makes you feel real good.
Sure,
It really does.
sure. It's a high compliment.
Yes,
Yes, it is. Yes.
that's why I said, I love the kids.
I took Tom Beck, our cameraman here, and his 2 brothers, and
And
Laura.
what were they like?
Oh, they were wonderful. They were wonderful.
Yeah, good kids.
Good family, and I took all of them to school.
Yeah. I remember, we had real good friends in Potsdam, and they had a little girl, real black hair, started kindergarten, and Lucille was her bus driver. And every morning she'd cry, what she wanted to wear to school. And they did their suffering the night before, and she still changed her mind in the morning. And she said, she goes out almost every morning crying, but said Mrs. Coughlin is so good to her. She just is real patient with her and waits on her.
I think one of the first things that we look forward to is the new year, when the new kindergarten get on. It's kind of exciting to learn the new children.
We have a comment here from Peggy Stein, who's going to speak for Dave.
Dave loved driving the bus. Like he said, he got Bernadine's bus. The kids loved him, he loved the kids, and he would take the kids down to the different trips, and one of the special ones they took was the Dayton Daily News building, and he toured right with them. He learned everything about the tour, so when he takes the next group down, he'd question those kids and say, okay, now you gotta look for this, you gotta look for that, and I'll ask you when you're done and see if you've looked at it. So all these kids are looking for this stuff. And they get back on the bus and he questions them and finds out what they've seen.
Yeah.
And then he had a rough accident one time. I couldn't figure out why he wasn't home. Over on Range Line Road and 571, he was pulling up to the stop sign. One of the kids was out of school, driving the car, hadn't been driving long, come flying out of Milton, turned on to Range Line, hit the front end of his bus and knocked it about a foot. And he had only had 3 kids, thank goodness. But he got called by the highway patrol, and of course, every time you have a bus accident, you have to go and have a drug test.
Yep.
Yep, make sure everything's okay. And then he was a bus driver trainer. The one that's bus driver now, they had
John.
John, I couldn't think of John's name. John had Dave doing the bus driving training, and so he's trained a lot of the bus drivers that are still there today. He loved his bus driving, but he had a stroke, and his speech is affected, and because of that, he wasn't allowed to drive the bus, and it just about killed him. He just loves driving those kids. He still sees them today, and they talk to him and say, "Hi, Dave," and he'll say hi, but can't remember their names. So it's just can't say it.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Well,
Anybody else have any stories? Go ahead.
Later on, my later years, I went to Dayton and started driving the regional bus that Nellie's talking about. Anyway, I drove down there for 9 years. And one year, around Christmas time, I got robbed. Yes, I pulled into Bob Evans, and Carmelita McGee was my aide.
Yes.
We pulled in there on a Monday morning, and we stopped for a cup of coffee because we had some time. And I parked the bus in the back of the building, and when we came back out, I got on the bus first, and I was coming up the steps, and she was behind me, and all of a sudden, this guy from the back jumps up with a hoodie on, something across his face, and he had a gun and a knife. And he said, "I want your GD purse." So I gave it to him. And then he wanted hers. And she started screaming. She was just screaming. She was scared to death. And she was coming up the stairwell. And he says, "I will, shoot you." So I told her, I says, "Carmelita, he's got a gun, so let's give me your purse." She gave me the purse, and I handed it to him. And so he goes and he jumps out the emergency door, and, he jumps off the bus. And I had the sense enough to pick up my radio and call the regional center, and at that time, the Riverside Police Department was monitoring our bus radio. So they heard me, and everybody started coming. I mean, I had fire trucks, policemen, all the school people coming out from the regional center, and they came over to us, and the police ran in this trailer park behind the Bob Evans there, and they found this guy, and he was walking down the street just slinging our purses. Hadn't even opened them. So they took our purses from him. And then they came back to Bob Evans, and he pulled in right behind me, and he said, "Come over, and I want you to identify this guy." And I was so angry with him. And so we got off the bus, and I identified him, that it was him, and they had our purses, and they were all intact. So what we did, we wound up going over to the police station, and they had all of our belongings out on this table. Carmelita had just cashed a couple checks. She had quite a bit of money. I think I only had $9. And anyway, they took a picture of that, put it on TV, and which I just never forget that. And then to make a long story short, we went to court and went through all of that business, and then they got 2 years. This kid did. And what happened, he was I think it was a foster child, and he was just on drugs and all that. So that was a scary thing to me. But they took the gun that he had, and the police took it out back to see if it had a real bullet in it. They told us it was not anything in it. And the knife he had stolen from a motel right there close.
Wow.
So that's my worst experience I think I ever had.
Oh, yes.
But when they got out of prison, he wrote us a letter apologizing. Of course, I think that's just the policy they have to do, when something like that happens.
Wow.
So that's the worst thing that happened to me. I also remember another thing. Evelyn Bowman and I went to Bellbrook and Norma Hellstrom on a trip. I don't know what kind of game we was going to. So, and on the way back, Norma was in front, and she takes off up 75, and we lose her. And she was just hightailing it up 75.
Speed demon.
So anyway, we got up there, and we got into school, and then as a car got between me and Evelyn. It was a band parent. She got between me and Evelyn, and I thought, what'd she do that for? So when I got to school, I'd jump off the bus and go chew her out for doing that. And so, you do some crazy things.
know who that is if you mention the name.
Yeah, I think everybody would know who that was, but anyway, that's another story.
Yeah, I think we all had pretty good kids, though, in general. There's always one, it seems like.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Then I had a girl that hyperventilated on the bus once. I don't know where I was going. I think I was down in South Dayton somewhere. And then I had sense enough to get a brown bag and let her breathe in it. So that was different.
I was the first bus to get the radios in. And I'm going up the hill on 571, and Bill Grafflin calls me and asks me, he said, Nellie, where are you? And I said, right here. I was dead serious. Now, I was right there, but I didn't. He said, no, what is your location? And I said, oh, I'm going up the hill. They was trying to see how far out that radio would carry.
Okay.
So, but
And now they all have.
they all have them, but
I thought so.
they put it on my bus first,
Sure,
and so,
sure. And that's good.
Yeah,
That is good.
that
Do you
is-
have GPSs? Do they have GPSs or not?
No.
No.
don't think so.
Okay. TV cameras, that's good too. That's good too.
Yeah, we drove back in the old days.
You rely on yourself. Yeah.
We took care of our own problems.
Yes.
Yes.
But we had
Yep.
good principals, too. I mean,
Yes.
they stood behind us.
Yes, that's good.
And on the JVS route, I remember several times Mr. Lindinsky coming in and riding with me and going back and talking to the kids. He was a good guy.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. I agree.
Every so often, he would ride to JVS too. He
Yes.
would go along to JVS, so the children knew that he was always present.
Sure.
Some of the things we did back then, we can't do now.
Right.
I got one.
Okay, go ahead, Kenny.
Evelyn Bowman's bus wouldn't start. So I pulled her with my bus. And I got out, I said, well, didn't it do anything? She said, no. I said, did you put it in gear? It's gear shift. You have to put gear shift in gear and then let out on a clutch that turns the engine over, would start it. Well, she didn't know that. So I could have pulled her all the way around West Milton and
Kenny forgot, I
So-
was just
so
a city
anyhow,
girl.
I wouldn't know that either, so.
I can remember another time when I took I think it was a wrestling team, or I think it was a wrestling team. Anyway, they won, and they came back to the little pizza place on Front Street there at the corner. And it was very, very cold. And I got there okay, and went to go start it to warm it up, and it wouldn't start. And so we had to call Kenny, and it's cold and it's late, and he has to warm his bus up too. Well, in the meantime, the policeman come around and said, because I was kind of part way around the corner, and he said, you're gonna have to get a wrecker, move this bus. And I said, well, Kenny's on his way in here, it won't be very long. And anyway, as soon as he got there, he kind of messed around a little bit, and we tried it again, and it started. So,
Well, you know.
yeah,
yeah, I'll tell you how that was. she was off of Main Street uptown here, and she called me and said the bus wouldn't start. So I brought my bus in here from out home, my chain, and I got out of my bus and dragging the chain back, and the policeman said, "What are you gonna do?" I said, "I'm gonna pull this bus down to the schoolhouse." He said, "I called the wrecker, Bob Smith." I said, "Well, you better call the wrecker back and tell him or he's gonna get the bill. You're gonna pay the bill." And I just hooked the chain to her and pulled her down here to
Yeah.
high school, I guess,
Then
didn't
it started, yeah.
Yeah.
I often think about, I don't know how many of you know, I mean, out here, Annie Brunsfeld. And of course, she could speak English, but she wasn't, real good. But one time, Dick Steiner lived next door to me, and Annie was on a trip. It was up at Eaton, and he come over and he said, "Would you go take your bus?" Annie's at Eaton, and her bus has broken down. So he drove me up, I took my bus and he followed me. We went up to I think it was the Pork Festival, they have a lot of people. And we got up there and found the bus, but there was no Annie. And we finally, I can't remember, but I believe finally we located her. Of course, they left my bus there. But Annie I often thought about her, how she communicated with the kids, with her, she was a good person.
She sang songs too in her language.
She was good. But
Remember the time the guy pulled a knife on her?
no.
She was so scared, she couldn't even drive. Her foot was shaking so
Good
bad.
darn.
Oh,
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I don't, a student or somebody else? Do you remember who it was?
Student or somebody else?
A student.
Oh, a student.
Oh, yes.
Wow. Wow.
I remember that.
I had a boy in Laura that liked frogs. He just, I don't know, something about him, he was just possessed with frogs. And he would bring one to school just about every day in his pocket. And he'd get on the bus and I'd call his name and say, "You got a frog in your pocket?" And he said, "Yeah, but I'll hold him. He won't get away, Pat." And I says, "Well, okay, you hang on to it." So, but there was several times he did get out. And the kids, he would take it back and let the kids pet it and all that kind of stuff. I said, "You guys are gonna get warts petting that frog."
Yeah, I had kittens on my bus one day. I parked my bus down at my mother-in-law's, father-in-law's, and kittens got on the bus somehow, and kept hearing this meow, meow. And here there was a couple little kittens, and they just held them till we got to school.
Well, Hilda had a bird nest on her bus. She loves birds.
Who had the mice? Somebody had mice too.
Judy.
It made me think I had a mouse one time, and I stopped by Coats's burial vaults. I opened the door, and out went the mouse over to the burial vaults. I said, "Good place for you, buddy."
Did you finish about the bird nest?
No, you didn't get to.
We had a brown thrush built out in a pile that Merle was gonna burn. And he started the fire in the pile of Durbus. And he saw birds, the nest of birds in there, so he reached in and grabbed them out real quick. And there was 2 of them. Lucille knows about it. And I took one of them and I took baby food and fed it. And I didn't know what I was gonna do because driving the bus, the birds needed about every 2 hours.
Right.
So I put the bird nest in the, what do you call it?
Glove box?
Yeah. And between runs, I would feed the bird. Talking about scary things. I was coming out Moat Road, and this lady never stopped for the, what road is that?
Baker?
No,
Garland?
there before you get to Moat, Kenny.
Baker.
Jay. And she never stopped there. She always come flying down the road. And she hit the back of my bus. I had pulled out. And that's a bad place because you can't see over the cemetery. And she hit the back of my bus and knocked it clear over to the side. I was almost over to the side. And we had to go to court. And Kenny and Lucille went with me. Thank God for Kenny. He's a great guy. And I was telling you, when the judge got me up there and was talking to me, I was shaking so bad, my butt was shaking. That's the truth.
Can you do it today?
Do what?
Can you shake today? Your rear?
Can you shake today?
Not like that.
I remember the time that Lucille and I went to Tip City on a field trip of, it was either the band or I think so. And she said, do you know how to go? And I said, sure. I know a real simple way, an easy way to get into Tip City's field. Well, I turned and I looked back. Lucille was with me, and boy, the cars behind. Here I turned in a different area. Don't you remember? No. And that was the biggest laugh. And those cars was all behind us, and they were having a fit.
It was following us.
Yeah, they were following us. They were so close to the bus that you couldn't even back it.
Anybody else?
You see what I put up with?
I see what you've had to put up with all these years, Kenny.
Yes, but it was good thing.
It has been. It's been wonderful, too, to hear all these stories. It has been incredible. This has just been wonderful, and I thank you so very, very much for relaying all your wonderful stories to us. So thank all of you, thank the audience, and thank all you bus drivers. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
We always got kisses from him.